An old enemy makes a surprising return, Spinner proclaims his rightful place in the villain hierarchy, and Himiko Toga has the opportunity to end this war before it even begins. Let's talk about all of this and more as we dive right into the newest chapter of My Hero Academia. So My Hero Academia Chapter 341 is finally out, and with it we get a quick catch up with what the villains have been up to during this vital preparation time for the final arc. But before I begin talking about this chapter, I'm first going to go into a quick summary of what happened last time. And as usual, don't forget to Detroit smash that like button and slide on into that subscribe button's DMs to hit that notification bell. In the last chapter, we saw Small Might, Chicken Man, and the Ace Detective, All Might, Hawks, and Tsukuchi regroup with a few other heroes and police officers at Midoriya's favorite location, Central Hospital, to discuss their plan of action against the League of Villains. Taking into account their opponent's absurdly overwhelming offensive capabilities, our heroes ultimately decide that to deliver the delicious dole the dastardly devils are due, each of the League's key members must be isolated and taken down one by one individually. Basically, the heroes are planning on doing boss rush mode, fighting each of the villains one by one until they're all taken out. However, for this plan to work, they all agree that they will need the help of 1A's former friend turned traitor and the boy who is essentially Midoriya if he'd grown up with money, think about it, Yuga Aoyama. We then saw that the heroes sent their best negotiator and empath to convince Aoyama to join their cause, Shota Aizawa, who essentially told the young boy in utter turmoil, listen kid, you done fucked up and that's bad, but you're my student so I don't give a shit, you're becoming a goddamn hero. And this surprisingly gets through to Aoyama temporarily, but he starts to doubt himself becoming a hero once more. So, to really send a message home that he will become a hero like everyone else, Aizawa informs his twinkling student that he won't be alone, and he isn't the only one being pushed to step up as a hero. As the story cuts back to UA, where we see Hitoshi Shinzo Spider-Man posing from a tree in his hero outfit as his friends call out to him, it's time, let's go. And this is where chapter 341 picks up. This chapter opens up with a change of perspective to the villain side of the story, where we see everyone's favorite bloody queen, Himiko Toga, slowly walking into a deserted house in the midst of a devastated town. As Toga begins to wander into the dilapidated building, it's revealed that this place is in fact Toga's childhood home, as we see graffiti all over calling her a demon, as well as markings on the wall which are actually Toga's height measurements for when she was growing up. As Toga is wandering through the now broken down and abandoned building, she begins to think about her parents. More specifically, how they used to tell her to repress her desire for blood and to act normal, claiming no one would ever accept her as a devil child. With these thoughts going through her head, Toga makes her way into her old bedroom. And once Toga enters this room, we get a flashback to a younger Toga lying down in her bed, half asleep. Here, Toga's narration explains that back when she was living in this house with her parents, every night she used to have the same dream. And that dream was of a little red sparrow that would fly in through her window and start dancing on her stomach. Eventually, however, the sparrow would stop dancing and begin to peck through her stomach and then continue dancing on her insides. As Toga says this line, we also see that in the flashback, still asleep, she begins to bite her own wrist, resulting in a gush of blood pouring onto her face and all over her pillow. Toga goes on to explain that in her dream, the red sparrow would splash around in her blood and guts, turning her red just like the sparrow, making her feel just as cute and as free as the little creature. And with this, the narration and flashback comes to an end, and the story cuts back to present day Toga, who is smiling, reminiscing about said dream, stating it was a good dream. But almost immediately after this, she reiterates to herself that that part of her life is now officially behind her, and she leaves her home for the last time. Upon leaving her house, Toga encounters Dabi waiting in a building window across the street. The two then have a little interaction where Dabi says that he is impressed that a crazy person like her has a sentimental heart, and he asks her if she has made up her mind about ending this world. To which Toga responds by saying, "My mind was made up long ago." In hearing this, Dabi goes on to say that tomorrow will inevitably come no matter if they cry or laugh. So the best thing to do is laugh. And with this, Dabi exclaims, "And people will laugh," as he uses his quirk to burn down Toga's old house. While initially taken aback by this, Toga proceeds to ignore the destruction of her family home, as she comments how Dabi is a kind person for checking up on her. But Dabi quickly corrects her, professing that he is only with her to make Endeavor's life harder in the near future. And it's here where Dabi reveals that the main reason he is following Toga is because during the war arc, he took blood from Twice's main body right after his death and gave it to Toga, knowing that she could use his quirk because he was someone she loved. And with this pretty big revelation, Dabi announces that they will continue the tragic sad man parade of Jin Bubaigawara. Now, Toga being able to use Twice's quirk is huge for multiple reasons. I mean, 1, it could result in the return of Twice, 2, it could change the entire outcome of the final incoming arc, and 3, it puts Toga in such a unique moral and mental dilemma that just oozes drama and excitement. Toga was devastated at the loss of Twice, like seriously destroyed. She even went on a murderous rampage of pure anger after it. So imagine the thoughts going through her head in thinking she can revive her beloved, cherished friend, but in doing so, she would force him to live out his biggest fear, being nothing more than a fragile copy. It's so poetically beautiful and puts Toga right in between a rock and a hard place. I mean, this alone has me questioning whether or not she will willingly use Twice's blood. Plus, there is the whole dilemma of Toga potentially not loving Twice enough, which would make her unable to use his quirk, and also the fact that Twice could only replicate a person in the last condition he saw them in. And when was the last time she saw Twice? When he was dying. God, it had so much drama. But anyway, following this, the story cuts to the cave where the rest of the League of Villains are hiding, where we see Shigaraki sticking out of a massive cocoon made of flesh, screaming in pain as Spinner is looking on, horrified. All for One tells Spinner not to worry, as this is just Shigaraki's regeneration process working as it should, and that he is gradually overcoming New Order's effect on him and the loss of numerous quirks. Skeptic, who is also there, then steps forward and begins to talk to Spinner about his purpose in the League. Skeptic goes on to explain that a lot of heteromorphic people, or those with mutation type quirks, already had problems with heroes even before the collapse of hero society, as despite the world supposedly being equal, they were often looked down on, thrown to the side, and forgotten about by their non-mutant peers. However, with both the League and the Meta Liberation Army's uprising, these forgotten and mistreated members of society have gained a new sense of hope, and this hope stems from a fellow mutant who stood against discrimination to fight for a better world, that mutant being Spinner. Skeptic continues by saying Spinner is no longer a simple Stain cosplayer or wannabe. He has now become the star that can guide his fellow mutants towards the light. Skeptic then hands Spinner a mysterious black device and says that he will be the one to, and I quote, pull the trigger in Redestro's place. All for One then chimes in saying that he agrees, and this single step of Spinner pulling the trigger will grant many others the courage to fight with them. After having all of this information dumped on him in this moment, Spinner is initially hesitant to accept this new role, but after he hears the still recovering Shigaraki say, "Let's destroy," he ultimately decides to take his new position for the sake of Shigaraki, his friend and leader. And with this, chapter 341 comes to an end, as we see several mutant-type villains all gathered together, including the sludge villain from the very first 2 chapters around Spinner, who is holding the mysterious black device, as All for One says, that's right, anyone can become a hero to someone else. Overall, this was a pretty strange chapter. It was interesting to see a bit more into Toga's mindset and past, and to learn that not only does she possess Twice's blood, but also the fact that Shigaraki is going through some insane healing, and Spinner will be the one to, and I quote, pull the trigger. But other than that, nothing really happened. I mean, when you really look into it, the whole thing about Toga's past was kinda unnecessary. She could have just been in the cave with Dabi and the others, and Dabi could have brought up her having Twice's blood there. Plus, Spinner having an important role was already mentioned in a previous chapter when they made him the face of the villains. So, all in all, while it was interesting and there were some important details mentioned, it didn't really feel like a big or vital chapter. Now, who knows, maybe Spinner's role in kicking everything off will be far bigger than anyone expects and he will become a huge player. Then this chapter of him receiving his position will be a hell of a lot more vital to the overall narrative. But let me know what you think of this chapter. If you like this video, don't forget to leave a like and comment what you think is going to happen next. For more My Hero content, subscribe to the Lunchtime crew. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Plus Ultra.